Hi, this is Tom. Welcome to the Tales of Mystara podcast. I'd like to start by saying thanks for giving my podcast a shot. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen, especially with the wealth of Dungeons & Dragons related content out there. My hope is that I can provide something a little bit different here, that will set this aside from the other podcasts. If you stick with it, and you enjoy it, then I have achieved what I set out to do, to entertain, tell a story, immerse an audience, and share my love of D&D. Once again, thanks for listening, and without further ado, let's get on with the show. The following podcast is for a mature audience and contains detailed descriptions of violence. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Tales of Mystara podcast, an experimental podcast that mixes traditional storytelling with old-school pen and paper role-playing games played entirely solo. This could be considered a dark fantasy novel or a solo Dungeons & Dragons campaign. If treated like a novel, then nothing can be assumed. Only the dice can determine the outcome. It cannot be known whether a character will live or die. Nothing is precious. No one is safe from the roll of the dice. If treated like a tabletop role-playing game, there are no players. There is no dungeon master. There is only me, the rules, and the dice. The Beastmen attacked in numberless waves from the west. The Traldar, in their glittering bronze armour, stood against them. The irresistible force of the Beastmen crashed into the unmovable object of the Traldar, and the war went on forever. Both sides lost great numbers of warriors. Each Traldar fighter slew dozens of his bestial enemies before being slain. Finally, King Halav managed to find the king of the Beastmen alone on a hilltop. The Beast King was twice the height of a man, with the head of a wolf and a hairy body that was foul beyond compare. It brought its great axe against the sword given Halav by the Immortals. This was the final battle of man and Beastman. The Song of King Halav. This is an ancient work maintained by generations of bards, before finally being committed to writing about 6 centuries ago. Date: Muldain 4, Claremont, AC 1000. Time: 10:13 AM. Party status: Claudius, 4 hit points. Theodore, 4 hit points. Elmo, 3 hit points. Ilyena, 3 hit points. Yolanda, 4 hit points. While Elmo sleeps in his magical slumber, the party searches the room thoroughly. Chairs, tables, underneath rugs, and in the ornate fireplace. Nothing is found. Yolanda breaks the silence. What are we going to do with him? Calm down, Ilyena. We'll think of something, says Claudius. Why don't you just wake him up? Yolanda says, shaking him. It won't work. This is powerful magic, says Theodore. Then we should carry on. We can't just leave him here, Yolanda. Ilyena's torch burns out at this point. Claudius, shine a light over here, she asks. Open your sack, Yolanda. Huh? You want more treasure? Here. Ilyena empties her sack into Yolanda's, lays it on the ground flat, picks Elmo up off the bed, and lays him out on the floor. Fyodor, help me carry him on this. He doesn't argue. And what about his sack of treasure? Yolanda says, I can't carry any more. Leave it here. We'll grab it on the way back, Claudius says. The party are now very encumbered, some more than others, and will be moving at a speed of 15 feet per turn from here on out. Yolanda lights her torch and takes the lead, with Ilyena following behind, carrying Elmo on the makeshift hammock. Fyodor holds the opposite end and Claudius guards the back of the party. The party make their way through the east doorway and find themselves in a 30-foot by 20-foot hallway, which has another doorway on the opposite east wall. Normal wooden doors are in the north and south walls. The room contains some trash, but nothing of any interest to the characters, who are currently pretty overloaded by their loot. I will now roll the dice to determine which way the party go, with a roll of a d6. 1 or 2, they go to the north door. 3 or 4, they go through the open doorway to the east. 5 or 6, they go through the south door. It's a 4. The party will go through the open doorway to the east. This room looks exactly the same as the bedroom on the other side of the hallway, but with 2 doorways in the east wall. Help me get him onto the bed, Ilyena asks Fyodor. Elmo is dragged onto the bed, and within 2 or 3 minutes, he rouses from his strange magical-induced sleep. Well, that worked out. Happy accidents, Yolanda says. How do you feel? Ilyena asks. After a long stretch and a yawn, Elmo answers. Refreshed. My shoulder doesn't hurt as much. I had the strangest dream. There was a great storm with thunder and lightning, and torrents of rain, and there was a bed stacked 20 mattresses high, where a princess slept after getting drenched in the storm. But she tossed and turned all night. Something hard was under the mattresses, a small pea. The peas, says Fyodor. That bag of dried peas? Perhaps they would have broken the spell somehow. Doesn't matter now, Claudius says. Hey, what happened to my sack? It's in the other room. We can grab it on the way back through, Ilyena says. Which way shall we go? Yolanda says. We need to get moving. Yolanda stays in the lead, lighting the way with a torch. Ilyena follows with Elmo close behind. Then Fyodor and Claudius stays at the back, still holding his lantern. Once again, I will let the dice decide. On a roll of 1 to 3 on a d6, the party will go through the northeast doorway. On a roll of 4 to 6, the party will go through the southeast doorway. The party move through the southeast doorway. The small, narrow corridor, 10 feet wide and 30 feet long, leads to another open doorway in the south wall. It is piled with trash and rubble. The corridor smells rotten, like the stench of death. Immediately after his agreement with the Emperor was signed into law, Duke Stefan sailed for his new duchy, making landfall in Specularum 2 weeks later. No fool, he presented his articles and orders to the city garrison before assembling the city leaders and then announcing his agreement with the emperor. The powerful Traladaran families in Specularum saw the political change as an opportunity to re-establish Traladaran independence. If they could kill the Duke when he was the most vulnerable, perhaps they could then erect a spirited defence to make it economically unfeasible for the cost-conscious Thyacians to conquer them again. However, the Marilynov clan prematurely led an armed revolt against the Duke and was decisively beaten by the Duke and the garrison. Most of the Marilynov men died in the attack. Naturally, from that point on, the Duke had his eyes on the other powerful families, especially the Radu and Torinescu clans. A second attempt was made on the Duke, an assault by hooded assassins in his very bedchamber, but Stefan awakened in time to seize his weapons and slay his attackers. He never found who had sent them, though the wealthy Traladaran families were naturally suspect. The Traladaran clans, offended by the Duke's stubborn refusal to accept assassination and overthrow, slowly and resentfully swore loyalty to him. They turned to other methods of combat and began to oppose him in the political, economic and mercantile arenas. The Duke, meanwhile, began luring talented and ambitious young nobles from Thyatis. He concentrated his attention on the second and third sons and daughters of Thyatis aristocracy. The young men and women who would have been properly trained to rule and hold land, but who would never inherit their own ancestral lands due to their siblings' continued good health. Many flocked to him, nobles and adventurers and merchants and common folk alike, ranging from single men and women to entire clans. Notable amongst these new retainers were Ludwig von Hendricks, Duke Stefan's aggressive and theatrical first cousin, who received a baronial title and lands in the western part of the duchy; Philip Vorloy, a successful merchant who provided substantial economic support to Duke Stefan and received a baronial title and lands to the east of the Marilynov estate; Sherlane Halloran, a nobleman and cleric of note, who received baronial rank and lands in the lushly wooded northern region of the duchy; and Desmond Kelvin, an officer and gentleman who was of crucial importance to Karameikos during the Marilynov rebellion and received baronial rank and lands north of Specularum, where the high-reach Volega River forks. As the party navigate the trash, they hear a shifting sound from the other side of a large pile. The sound is followed by a moan. The party realise quickly that it's not really the trash that's giving off the awful stench. 4 rotting zombies in the late stages of decomposition appear from around the large pile of trash and rubble. They are slow and cumbersome, their rotting legs struggling to carry them gracefully through the trash and debris. They will automatically lose initiative. Claudius will attempt to turn these undead creatures. Theodore will try to find cover amongst the trash and rubble, keeping a safe distance with his knife ready in case he is attacked. Elmo pulls out his hand axe, and Ulyana and Yolanda draw their swords and move forward, ready to attack the zombies if they come too close. Theodore does his best to gain cover from a pile of nearby rubble and trash. I will roll 2d6 to see if Claudius successfully turns the zombies. He needs a 9 to succeed. It's a 9. I will now roll 2d6 to determine the number of hit dice of zombies the cleric turns away. It's a 6, so that means that 3 zombies will be turned. Claudius prays intently.
"Begone, stout spirits. You're banished,"
he says triumphantly. They shuffle round on their decrepit bones and disappear through the southern doorway. One still remains. It moves forward, arms reaching out as it makes its way unsteadily towards Yolanda, Elmo, and Ilyena. I will make attack rolls for all 3 of them. Yolanda swings her sword in response. She needs an 11 or higher to hit the zombie. Somehow she misses. Elmo hits easily with his axe though, and does 3 points of damage, lobbing off the zombie's arm up to its elbow. Ilyena also easily hits and does 2 points of damage, slicing into the flesh of the zombie's torso, revealing more of its already half-exposed ribcage. The zombie lunges forward, hacking mindlessly at Yolanda with its rusty sword. It takes her by surprise, striking her fiercely for 3 damage. Yolanda now only has 1 hit point remaining. She is badly wounded. A large gash is above her abdomen. In the next round of combat, Claudius will attempt to turn the zombie away once again. Theodore, seeing Yolanda badly wounded, realises he must also act. He will attempt to throw his dagger to see if he can hit the zombie with it. Yolanda, Ilyena and Elmo will attack again with their weapons. Theodore throws his dagger from 20 feet away. He rolls a 2. The dagger barely has the force or momentum to make it up the corridor. It falls short, disappearing amongst the trash. "Rats!" Theodore shouts. Claudius attempts once again to turn the zombie away. He only gets a 4. It's no use. I will now make attack rolls for Yolanda, Elmo and Ilyena. Yolanda, too distracted from the pain of her wound, cannot hit this time either. Elmo hits again easily with his axe though, and does 5 points of damage this time, severing the zombie's spinal column enough to dismember its torso from its legs. The battle is over, but Yolanda is very hurt. She slumps to the ground, with the pale look of death on her face. Ilyena and Claudius move to her aid, hoisting her onto her feet.
"We need to get her back to town quickly,"
Claudius says.
"That's enough for one day."
You have been listening to the Tales of Mystara podcast. I sincerely hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you have listened on YouTube, then I would appreciate you taking the time to subscribe, click the like button, and let me know your thoughts in a comment. If you have listened on iTunes, then I would appreciate it if you would leave a 5-star review. These things really help, and they let me know that the work I put into this podcast is worth it, and that I am making content that people like. After all, that's why I'm doing this. Once again, thanks for listening. I'll see you next session.